Hey Bessie, I'm Dr. ADHD and I read a Am I the A-hole post that we just have to talk about. So first of all, welcome. How are you? How you been doing? You look great. I'm so glad that you're here and that you joined me. I am a physician, a medical doctor who also happens to have ADHD. I don't currently treat ADHD even though my training did cover it. So that's just a little background about me and who I am. So what did I want to talk about? Well, there's an Am I the A-hole post on Reddit that I just really need to talk about. So what is this post? It is a male nurse who works in the ER. And he said that during this ER day, they were extremely busy. They had a lot of critically ill patients, and in fact, they even had somebody who was currently unalive, and they were trying to bring them back with CPR. That's usually what we call a code blue. The code blue is when the heart has stopped, and we're doing all of our medications and all of the procedures we can to try to bring that heart back to life and beating again. We're usually trying to get airways, which means a tube down the throat. We call that intubation. We get IVs in the arm, and it takes a fairly large team. As somebody who was a physician I was actually an intern physician, which means I had just graduated medical school, and I was about 9 months out of medical school when March 2020 happened. I was in a large city, Detroit, and I was in one of the hardest hit hospitals in our state. And for those of you who are alive in 2020, you might remember the news, the national news. Detroit was typically on the news as one of the hot spots, as one of the epicenters every single wave. So with that, I ran a lot of code blues. Being the physician, you're typically team lead. And at my hospital, it was physicians. Every hospital's different, so I know there's going to be some people in the comments like, oh, at my hospital, it's Okay, let me know in the comments how it is at your hospital. Because at my hospital, it was us medical residents. I was internal medicine. And we focused on, and we were the ones who ran the team. Now, we had wonderful, what we called SWAT nurses. These nurses were specialized in rapid responses and code blues, and they came to all the code blues with us, and they were wonderful, especially if you were a new intern. You're just like, oh, like, what do I do? And we had one, we called her D, which shout out D, if you're ever watching this, you're amazing. We love you. And she would always be like, oh, doctor, do you think you need to do this? You know, just being very, in a very nice way, reminding us of things, because there are a lot of things that go on in a code blue. There are a lot of things you have to think about. I actually use an app. Well, when I used to run code blues, I used an app on my phone that kept track of how long we've been doing CPR, because you're supposed to do it for like 2-minute cycles, and then you stop for 10 seconds, check for a pulse, and then start again if there's not a pulse. It also keeps track of when the last time you gave epinephrine, which is a medication that's kind of, to put it in layman terms, kind of like adrenaline. This helps speed the heart rate. It also helps increase blood pressure. It's short acting. You give that every 3 minutes. And then you can also, depending on what type of code it is, because it depends on what kind of heart rhythm you have. It's not always, as we say, a systole or that flat line that you see on TV. Sometimes it can be like VFib, where the bottom of your heart is beating strangely. And so for those, we'll give like amiodarone, try to help stabilize the heart and try to get that heart beating regularly again. So I understand that this is a high stress situation. Trust me, I get it. I've ran working in 2022 and 2020 and 2021. I definitely know how high stress those can be. They actually became a normal everyday occurrence for me, which if you work in healthcare, you know that code blues typically aren't everyday occurrences. Even if you work in a tertiary center, which tertiary means like this is the big hospital, this is the end of the line, they have all the surgeons, they have all the staff, they do all the procedures, like this is like, you know, like think like Mayo or Cleveland Clinic or Mount Sinai or like whatever. Like these are the big main hospitals that you go to, right? So these are tertiary centers. And so even in these places where you have like the sickest of the sick, because that's where you send the sickest, that's where you send the people with the rare diseases. Even with these places, like code blues don't typically happen every day. Do they happen? Of course, yes, because people get sick, but they don't tend to happen every day. And so here I was running them not only every day, but multiple times a day. And there were several points during this period of time when it got so bad, it would be like multiple happening at the same time. It was insanity. So when I say I understand how stressful it can be, I do. I know I'm internal medicine, so internal medicine doctors can work in clinics. You know them as primary care physicians outside of the hospital. Inside of the hospital, internal medicine, we can be hospitalists. We can be, if you're not in a trauma 1 or trauma 2 emergency room, so that means, where all like the biggest, baddest, most critical patients go to like trauma 1s or trauma 2s. And as long as it's not a trauma 1 hospital, then typically internal medicine can work in the emergency room as well. And in fact, if you work in the emergency room for 5 years as internal medicine or even family medicine, you can then take an exam and become board certified in that field. But there is a specialty just for emergency medicine, so I'm not knocking ED doctors. What they do is extremely stressful. And I, even though I have ADHD, and I did consider emergency because it is so fast paced and it is just constant go, 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 go. They literally have like no downtime. They are just like doing the best that they can with like zero information, because a patient will come in unconscious. You have no idea why. The labs aren't back yet. So you're just trying to stabilize and pray to God you can figure it out. So you're getting imaging, you're getting labs, you're getting everything. So I want to shout out ED physicians, ED nurses, wonderful, amazing. Thank you for being you. And thank you, when you call me, because I get a lot of consults and I get calls from them, and I'm always extremely nice. I'm very surprised when I hear that consultants like scream at nurses or at physicians who call them. Like I'm the type of physician, I would rather you call me if you're unsure and it be something benign and something not to worry about. And I go, no, don't worry about it. Wait till morning. Then you not call me and it's an emergency and you should have called me. So I'm much more of that sort of physician. I'm like the newer breed of physician, I guess. So I don't believe in, how poorly we treat each other in medicine. I think we should all treat each other very kindly, very nicely. But all of this to say, give you some background that I do understand how the ER is. I was consulted a lot to the ER. I have to be in the ER to see patients. During my residency, we actually have to do a few months of ER. Then or they call it ED now, emergency department. In medical school, you have to do like about, I think maybe like 2 to 4 months of emergency as well, because emergency is where everything comes into the hospital. Like this is how patients come in. This is how, we start to see them. They're the ones who, like, they are your first point of contact. So as a physician, you should know. Okay. So let's get back to the story. So this nurse is saying it's a really stressful day. Just some days in the emergency room, everything goes wrong. Everyone's sick. Everyone is unaliving. Everyone's heart stopping, everyone's blood pressure's crashing. Like, it can be very, very stressful. There's a lot of noise in the emergency room. There's a lot of movement. There's people running over here, over here. The doctors are being like, what were the labs? Have you gotten the labs? Have you given this medication? Have you done that? So I understand as a emergency room nurse, it's a lot. Because not only are you dealing with these emergencies, but you're also then dealing with the patients who are like, I'm cold, give me a blanket. I'm thirsty, give me a soda. So on top of you trying to save people's lives, you also have people saying, I'm uncomfortable and I need you to help me be more comfortable, which is understandable. These people are sick and they feel bad and they want, the few things they can control they want. So a soda and a turkey sandwich and a blanket, if they can ask for that and control that and be able to have that, then I understand why they're asking. Like, this is the worst day of people's lives. Okay, for most people, this is scary. They have no idea what's going on. And I understand where patients are coming from. Okay, I get it. But I can also see where nurses are coming from. They're being pulled all sorts of ways. And unfortunately, since 2020, if y'all didn't know, in the United States, private equity has bought up a lot of hospitals. What is private equity? It's basically Wall Street. Wall Street comes in and they buy up all these clinics. They try to make a profit and then they sell it off. Or they just shut down the entire hospital, leaving people in the lurch, like leaving people without access to medicine. Like private equity, like let me get on my little soapbox. Private equity should not exist in healthcare because it literally is harming patients. And when I say they are saving money and like saving money so that way there's more on their bottom line, so that way they can pay the stockholders, which is very dangerous in healthcare. And how they do that is they leave us with a skeleton crew. So they will have one nurse for like 12 patients, 12 to 20 patients. And I'm sure some nurses in the comments can tell me even more about how hard they have it in the ER. And we should listen. Hello, lawmakers, listen, get private equity out of medicine. Like, I don't know why laws were made to make it to where doctors, doctors who have worked hard and they have done what they needed to do, like they spent decades of their life dedicated to patients, and they want what's best for patients, and they took all the power away in healthcare from doctors and they gave it to MBAs who spent most of their time going in Las Vegas instead of studying because their daddy knows somebody on the board and got them the position. And that's who you gave healthcare to. That's who you are, like, people's lives are relying on Chad to have empathy. Like, please put doctors back in charge of healthcare because the way it's being run now is insane. So all of this backstory to give you, this nurse who's writing the story is probably very stressed. They probably are working at a hospital that's understaffed, and they're probably running from patient to patient, getting blankets, getting medications, doing chest compressions, keeping time. Anyway, I got a bunch of calls from cryptid boyfriend. He didn't see me filming, so he was scared, and I had to answer that, but now I'm back. So the point is, this nurse who's writing this post, I can absolutely understand them being stressed, and the reason I'm saying that is because I want you to have this background before I keep going with this story. So this nurse is really stressed out. They're trying to give medications, they're trying to give blankets, they're trying to comfort the sick, they're trying to, comfort family, because families will be there. Their family member is, their heart just stopped, and maybe we're not able to get them back, so we're comforting them. There's a lot of things that go on to taking care of patients that patients don't even realize. There's a lot of things that we're juggling. So while he's taking care of all these people, there is a woman in the waiting room who comes up and just starts screaming and is yelling because she's had to wait for a long time. She's been in the waiting room, and he didn't say why she was there, which is good, HIPAA. And even though he didn't even say like how old he was or what hospital he's at, still just protect patients' privacy and don't be like blasting why they're there. But there are some people who treat the emergency department as primary care. So they go there for colds, they go there for toe pain that's been there for years. They go there for a lot of things that I necessarily wouldn't go to the hospital. But then again, sometimes I'm interviewing a patient and I'm like, so what brought you here? And they say their symptoms, and I'm like, I'm having the same exact symptoms. Should I be here? Like, there are some patients in some cases I've had, I'm like, I really need to be I need to be checked. Like, I have stomach pain too. Like, also, my PHQ-9 score is like 27. Should I be here? So, like, you never know. Because there are some people who come in and you're like, oh, it's just belly pain, blah, blah, blah. Then you do a CT scan and, oh my gosh, it's cancer that's spread everywhere. So you're just like, oh my gosh. Like, then you feel bad. Then you feel bad for being like a little judgy. And what happens with this is kind of experience, because I will say, like, when I was new, I was very much like, just like what I said, like, oh, I have these same symptoms and I'm not in the hospital, and then you check a lab, and then you check this, you check that, and you're like, oh my gosh, they're, having a heart attack, or, like I said, their belly is full of material that should not be there, let's put it that way. Or, oh my gosh, their blood pressure all of a sudden tanked, because then we go look at their heart, and around their heart's full of fluid, but they come in with these vague complaints that you're like, okay, but since being a doctor and practicing, I've learned if a patient says that they feel like they are about to be unalived, you should listen to them, because they are probably right and something's probably going on. And it's really funny because in medical school, I remember we learned about aortic dissection, which your aorta is like this big tube that goes from your heart down to your hips, and it splits, and it carries a lot of blood. It basically carries the blood everywhere to the body. So it's this huge tube, and if it ruptures, that's real bad, because you only have about 6 to 7 liters of blood in your body. I know you think you have a lot more. I was shocked as well when I learned this information. And when that opens up, it's pretty much the end. So people say one of the symptoms of aortic dissection is impending doom. And I always thought that was like the most wild side effect or symptom, because none of the other symptoms we really talk about, unless we're talking about like psych diagnoses, use like feelings as a diagnosis factor, So that was very interesting. And one thing I learned in residency, which residency is when doctors do at minimum 3 years and 15,000 hours of supervised training, with a more doctor-y doctor, so a doctor who finished residency supervising you. Like literally you have to explain every single decision you make to them. And that's after medical school, by the way. This isn't medical school, the 8 years of like undergrad, like 4 years undergrad, 4 years medical school. This is in addition to. So doctors have a lot of training. And in that, we kind of work out the kinks. We kind of work out that like cynicism, most of us. Obviously there's egotistical people and people who don't listen in any career, not just doctors. So anyway, so this woman is up at the ER desk, and she's just yelling, screaming, because she's had to wait. And this nurse looks at her and is like, if you have this much energy to yell and scream, maybe you don't need to be in the ER. So, woman did not take it well. She reported that nurse to their higher ups, and the nurse now has to meet with their higher ups, and they're coming to Reddit, and they're like, Reddit, am I the a-hole? And like I said before, I've given y'all a lot of background. I know this was a lot of background that I gave for like basically telling you the short story. I know I don't read the Reddit post to you. I'm still beginning on YouTube. When eventually I find an editor and I am able to set up a studio and we have good lighting and I'm indoors, we will all laugh about my beginning videos together. But right now we're just besties, just talking about this thing that I read. And I'm just giving you my opinion as a physician and just with my experiences as a human being. So, most of the comments were saying like, yeah, you are the a-hole. Like, you can't talk to patients that way. And it's absolutely true. Like, you cannot, like I said before, I have ran code blues, okay? And in the state that I was training in, I already told y'all, Detroit. So the state I was training in, the hospital I was training in, it was like a smaller, not too small, a medium-sized like community hospital. And, there we had 2 patients to a room, right? With just that little curtain in between. I don't know how that works with HIPAA, but a little curtain in between them. And, I would be running code blues. So someone's heart has stopped. I'm giving like, hey, you need to call the family. You need to do this. You need, like, you got to give epinephrine. We're just running this code. And I would have the patient on the other side of the curtain yelling at me. And I'd be like, yeah? And they'd be like, I need a soda. And I'd be like, okay. I'm like, well, right now we're trying to handle an emergency, but I'm like, after we can get you that soda. So you need to give us a little bit of time because your roommate is having an emergency right now and we have to focus on them. And that's how I spoke to them. Even though, I'm not going to lie to you, I was high-key annoyed. Like, you are allowed to be annoyed in healthcare. The thing about it is people don't understand what we go through in healthcare, okay? Their worst day, their most traumatic day, their scariest day of being in the hospital is our everyday. You know, we deal with this trauma, we deal with the sadness, we deal with these diagnoses, we deal with people's heart stopping. Like, this is our everyday, you know? We learn to compartmentalize, we learn to have gallows humor. You know, there's a whole term for it, gallows humor. Like, this is the dark humor that all of us who deal with human tragedy daily have to like survive. Like, you have to have some sort of sense of humor, or they're gonna be like completely closed off emotionally. Like, you cope with however you can cope in medicine, however you're able to, okay? And so to this nurse, they're like, am I the a-hole? I'm not going to say necessarily you're an a-hole, okay? You're a nurse. I obviously know that you care about patients, and that's probably why you're so overstimulated right now, is because you do care so much. If you didn't care, you wouldn't be overstimulated. You wouldn't be so flustered by the fact that someone's heart stopped and you just had to help with the code. Like, you wouldn't have been so sassy, because if you didn't care, you know, you would just been like, okay, whatever, like, go sit back down. But on the other hand, was it right for you to do that? No. Like, you can't talk to patients like that, because, like I've been saying this whole time, this is their scariest day of their life. You know, even if to us, because we have seen most outcomes, we have seen how most people will be if they have this symptom versus that symptom. Like, we see the trends, so we know this probably won't be that serious of a visit. To that person, to that patient, they don't know that. To that patient, they have a symptom that was so concerning, they were willing to come to the emergency room, okay? And I know it's so easy to get cynical. I 100% understand. And I feel like this nurse is probably a new nurse, because I remember being new in the hospital, and people would tell these jokes that if the average person heard them, they would be like, like, clutch their pearls, like, what do you, like, I cannot believe you said that. But as people working in healthcare, we're like, okay, like, we kind of get it. And you kind of take what these, like, people who have been doing healthcare for a long time, and you kind of internalize it. And he kind of said the thing that we all say behind closed doors, because, you know, it is kind of a saying, like, if you're in the ER and you're waiting, that's actually a good thing, because if you're not waiting, that means you're really sick and things are not going well for you. Which is true. If you're having a heart attack, you're going to be seen first. If you are in sepsis, you're going to be seen before somebody who came in for, like, a stubbed toe or even a broken toe, you know, because that's not life-threatening. We put the people who have life-threatening complaints first. Now, to be fair, sometimes people come in with a complaint and people will brush them off, especially women. And women in the comments, you can tell me below about times that people haven't listened to you. Trust me, I'm not downplaying that. In fact, there was a story of a physician who went to the ER. Like, it was literally at a hospital she worked at. And all of a sudden, she felt this severe abdominal pain, a pain that she had never felt before in her life. She felt how, like, dizzy, nauseous. She could feel lightheaded. She knew something really bad was going on. Like, this was a feeling she had never felt before. She went to the ER. I think she even had to have an ambulance come get her because it was her day off. And unfortunately, the EMTs who got her said that this was anxiety and a panic attack, because she was stressed out. Like, obviously, like me as a physician, I'm going to be stressed out too if all of a sudden I have these symptoms that I've never had before and are so severe I feel the need to call the hospital. Like, because I don't want to go to the hospital. I never do. Like, I literally went blind in one eye and left the hospital AMA, which is against medical advice, because I didn't want to be admitted. So, like, trust me, if I'm calling the ambulance to come get me and come bring me to the hospital, like, you better believe something's wrong. And something was wrong with this woman, and she almost unalived in the waiting room. and nurses kept coming up to her and telling her to stop being dramatic, because they thought she was just having a panic attack. And we call this an anchor diagnosis. So if someone says, oh, it's just anxiety, and everyone goes, oh, it's anxiety, and they won't move from that diagnosis. So even though like this woman, she had like poor vitals, which vitals are like your blood pressure, pulse, fever. I think from her story, like she did meet like septic criteria, but for some reason they were just like, oh, you're just like overreacting. It's just your anxiety. I guess they did draw some labs, and she's just like she can feel herself like passing out, and she's begging them like, please, please, please listen to me. And the nurses kept saying like, quit being dramatic. Like, and they told basically her the same thing that nurse told that patient, which was, if you can talk, you're not that sick. Okay. In many cases, can that be true? Yes. Like if you're talking, if you're awake, can that be true? Yeah. But then also you have to realize like everybody is different. Like I can be completely like blackout unconscious, and I will be talking, I will be walking, I will be acting like I'm completely normal. Like no one ever has any idea, because to be fair, I feel like I have a lot more neurons, which I do, than some other people, and she is able, like as a physician, she's probably is like more aware of her symptoms and able to speak and talk and say what she has more eloquently than a layperson who has no experience in that. And the human will can do a lot. Like if someone is determined, like you've heard of people who have been like left for unalived, who have that determination, and they crawl out of the gutter, or they crawl out of the ditch where they were left, and they'll like run to the street, because adrenaline happens. And if you're a physician and you know that you're not feeling well, like your adrenaline's going to be up, because something's not right, and it's probably an emergency. So your cortisol, your adrenaline, you are going to be amped, and you're going to be awake enough to be like, hey, help me. Compared to like maybe a lay person who's just like, oh, my stomach hurts, this doesn't feel good, like, yeah, I want to go to the hospital, but they might not be realizing the severity of their symptoms, and they might just like relax and go to sleep. Like her, she's going to be awake and she's going to be fighting, especially if no one's paying attention to her. She says the last thing she remembers is the ER physician, like runs out of the back in the emergency room and runs to the waiting room. He's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I just saw your labs. Nobody told me you were here. Nobody told me, about your vitals. Nobody updated me. I just got your labs back, and I just saw like her white count. So white count is the white blood cells. White blood cells can mean a lot of things, but in this situation, it means infection, or super, super high, which means a bad infection. Her vitals were low, like she had low blood pressure, which is not good in this situation. He's like, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know that you were here. And like, as soon as she like heard that, she passed out, because I think she was finally able to like relax and be like, oh, thank God, someone's going to take care of me now. Unfortunately she survived, but she could have easily not. Like sepsis. So sepsis is when your infection goes throughout your whole body, and it affects like your blood pressure, it affects your heart rate, it increases your white count, and it's just a really bad infection. And like each hour you go without antibiotics increases your risk of unaliving by like a significant amount. Like some hospitals now even have code sepsis, like we would for code blue or code stroke, which means you need to pay attention immediately, and you need to start giving antibiotics immediately. And you need to do the whole workup now. So my advice to this nurse is, first of all, you need to apologize. When you go meet with your higher ups, you need to say, yes, I said it. I have reflected on it. I realized how inappropriate that was for me to say to this patient. I was really flustered, but that's not an excuse. I have since reflected, and I've learned that what I said was not kind, was not fair. I do care. I care a lot. I care so much. That's why I was so stressed out. But I won't let that happen again. Next time I get that stressed out, I'll take a step back, and I'll go pass meds, or I'll go, get the blanket, or, come up with an action plan. Be like, if I get that stressed out, I'll, take 10 deep breaths, then I will calm down. Like, you need to find something to help you calm down. And maybe the ER isn't for you. On one hand, you know, if you are neurodivergent, because I don't know if you're neurodivergent, you know, it seems like you got very overstimulated. Like, you didn't say that, but the way your story went, it sounded like you were overstimulated. So you might be neurodivergent. Usually the ER attracts neurodivergent people. Like, most of the nurses, most of the doctors are neurodivergent in the ER. So I can see why you were attracted to that. If you're getting that flustered that often, though, maybe a different type of medicine or a different type of nursing would be better for you, better suited for you. Like maybe PACU or something like that, where it's PACU can still be very stressful. Please, PACU nurses, do not attack me in the comments. I realize bad things happen in PACU, but it's a little less intense than the ER, a little bit. And I understand really awful things happen. And so for people who don't know, PACU is like the after you've had surgery room. It's the recovery area. And of course, bad things can happen because the complications with surgery happen all the time, and they can happen immediately after surgery. You know, so I do not want PACU nurses attacking me in the comments, but you know, as a PACU nurse, compared to the ER, typically, especially if you're not in like a trauma 1 or a tertiary center, so where like all these like emergency trauma surgeries are happening, where it's mostly elective surgeries, which again, I know things happen even with those, it's a little more calm than an ER. So, you know, just consider your options. If you feel like ER is for you, and you're not already diagnosed, I say, hey, maybe go talk to a doctor, let them know you've been being overstimulated, let them evaluate you. See if maybe you have like ADHD or autism or any kind of neurodivergence. You know, let's see how you do. And then find ways to calm down. Like, I know it's hard, but if it's maybe you need to go out in the hall and do some jumping jacks, or you know, maybe you need to drink one less Monster Energy, or, you know, maybe do a little bit less nicotine so you're a little less on edge. Whatever it is, you just got to figure out something to calm down. You know, maybe it's taking some deep breaths. Maybe it's doing a short little meditation, like going to the bathroom. I know as healthcare workers, we usually tend to put ourselves last. We don't go to the bathroom. We don't eat. We don't drink because we don't want to have to go to the bathroom. But one thing I learned during the 2020 era of my life is sometimes you just got to go to the bathroom. Like, dude, like just go to the bathroom and take a few minutes. Like, for the most part, I know you're in the ER and I know emergencies do happen, but there are other nurses there. There are other staff. If you take a couple minutes in the bathroom, it'll be okay. Like, everything will be okay. Unless your patient is actively decompensating, then yes, please alert the doctor. Please alert, you know, your charge nurse. Like, please let somebody know. But, you know, don't make yourself suffer, really. And this goes for all healthcare workers. Like, do not suffer and burn yourself out for this job. Because while it is a calling, and I absolutely feel that way, I felt called to be a physician since I was a child. I know there's a lot of nurses out there who feel the same way. PT, so physical therapists, occupational therapists, respiratory therapists, you know, certified nursing assistants, you know, techs, you know, our sonographers, our radiology techs. Like, I know everyone has a calling to be in healthcare, because healthcare is not a fun job. Literally, it is stressful. Like, I love it. I love taking care of patients. I hate healthcare and how it has become because of businesses buying out hospitals and clinics and putting money over patients. I don't like that. I'm very disillusioned by that. I'm very disillusioned by insurance. Like, I'm a physician and my insurance sucks. Like, I just got on a new generic medication and it cost me $200 a month. $200 a month. And I'm paying like $15,000 a year in this insurance. Like, how dare you charge me that much money? How dare you charge me that much money, but then you don't pay for anything? Like, literally, what is the point of insurance at this point? And these insurance companies, by the way, are buying up clinics. They're buying up pharmacies. So, like, I feel like this should be, like, illegal. Because doctors aren't allowed to, like, I'm not allowed as a physician, because I refer for ultrasounds all the time. And I'm not allowed as a physician to own the ultrasound center where I'm sending a patient and make money off of that. You know, even if I charge a fair price, even if it is something that the patient needs, I'm not allowed to own the ultrasound machine. I'm not allowed to charge for it because conflict of interest or blah, 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 whatever. But insurance companies who are making billions and billions and billions and billions of profit are somehow able to open clinics and open pharmacies, and they're allowed to take money back from physicians 10 years later. They're like, actually, we shouldn't have to pay for that. And you either need to prove to us in 2 seconds that we should have paid you, or we're not going to give you any money for any patient ever. Like, they're literally the mob. So if you find out that I am no longer with us on this earth, it's probably the insurance companies that did me in, so... But anyway, I hope you had fun, bestie. I think that's really all we need to say. Working in healthcare is hard. I can understand being stressed, but on the other hand, patients are too. It's super stressful, especially in America. It costs a lot of money to get healthcare for some freaking reason. And don't worry, it's not going to doctors. I know all the media and everybody likes to blame doctors. It's not us. Did you know out of all the healthcare spending, if every doctor was fired today, that would only save 8% of healthcare spending. 8%. And by the way, any money that we get reimbursed goes to our overhead. So any money that an insurance company pays me has to go to my staff, has to go to the electronic medical record, because by the way, that's not free. That's like millions of dollars. It has to go to the light bills. It has to go to our lawn guys. It has to go to the people we have to hire to fight with insurance companies to get our money paid, because if I spent time fighting with insurance companies telling them my worth, I wouldn't have any time to see patients. Like, this system is so broken and I don't like it, and it's so rough, but I love patients and I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you don't mind, if you can hit like and subscribe in the bottom of this video, and I plan to post at least weekly little rants. Hopefully eventually I'm able to find an editor who can do like cool memes and stuff. Like, I really like Charlotte Dobre, and I really like Dylan Is in Trouble, and I really like Jamie French. I know she does her own editing. I also really just found Lazy. I like the editor for that too. So one day I'll find a really cool editor who can insert memes when I'm making references to them. And I'll have a setup, and it'll be beautiful, and it'll be the most beautiful lighting that'll be so aesthetically pleasing, and I will have a mic that makes my voice sound so beautiful and rich, and you'll just love to listen to me. But right now, this is the very beginning of my channel, and I'm so happy that you're here. If you are from my Instagram page, just go ahead and leave me the hugging emoji. And then if you found me through YouTube or other ways than Instagram, then go ahead and leave a bear emoji. So that way I know who's who. And if you have any suggestions of Reddit stories that I should read, then go ahead and email them to me. I believe my email is dr.adhd.do, I believe. I'll have to check. It's on my Instagram if you want to go there, which my Instagram is Dr. ADHD. Doctor spelled out, ADHD all together. No dots, because I was able to get that name before everything was taken. Anyway, again, thank you so much for coming, and I hope you come back next week. Bye.